Do we go out? Do we go in? I like it out because I like all your stuff, but not that far out. Thank you for joining, everybody. We are live again. This is Myki Angeline, your host of the Bad Filipino podcast. It is Friday, and we're finally in October, and I finally get to sit down with this incredible, amazing indie rock artist. I believe you're on the East Coast, right?
I'm technically in the Texas coast. Is that a
Okay,
thing?
Texas Coast. Well, you're not
Yes.
California. I'm like, you're somewhere.
No, I'm somewhere. Yeah.
With Onism E music. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining today, especially on a Friday. What time is it now there in Texas?
I don't know.
Because I know
it's Friday.
It's Friday. It's Friday. That's what time it is. It's 5 o'clock here on the West Coast. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast. You're somewhere in between.
It's 7.
7 o'clock. That's a perfect time for you.
Yes. 7's a good number.
So yes, very good. And what is okay? So over here, I don't know if you've seen it in your news, but we're just dealing with all these fires still. So the air quality where I'm at, I haven't been outside day 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it's getting kind of old.
My girlfriend's in Oceanside, so yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. See. Mm-hmm. And then so for you in Texas, though, whichever part it is you're in, are things starting to open up there? Is it still kind of a shutdown for the quarantine there for you?
It's like it's hit or miss. It's like some are, not all the restaurants are open or anything like that. I think it might be at 50%.
Okay.
I'm a recluse, and so this just goes to my nature, my natural hermit-like nature. Oh. So I don't really leave my studio or my house much.
So this is perfect for you in a sense.
I'm not gonna say I've been in any hurting situation. No.
Well, there it is. And so, and as we go into, well, I say fall. Fall was technically September 22nd. But yesterday and today for us, it's been 100-degree weather, so it doesn't feel at all like fall.
Yeah. No, it's been nice here. It's been really nice here.
Oh, that's good. So let's let our listeners and those watching give us a little insight on you, Onism, because that's your project name.
Right.
Like how you came up with that name and how you started it.
So I like to tell the truth, and what had happened was, I actually it was originally Onism E. I had a guitar player, and his last name started with a V, and so and that was actually his word. I took it from him, and I was like, man, I love that word. I love what it means. It's like you're that knowledge that you're just one person. And you can only be one place, and that frustration of knowing that, because I'm such a nomadic wanderer, I'm just constantly on the go. So anyway, and it just it stuck, because even when he left, I was like, I'll just drop the V, no big deal, because it's just me anyway half the time, so it's all good.
There it is. And does it have a significant meaning though, like the breakdown of it, or?
Well, Onism obviously is not obviously, I won't say that. Onism is just that knowledge, that's that word, that knowledge that you're just, you're one person in one spot when you can be anywhere else. And the E is the first initial of my name.
I see. And then you talk about being so nomadic, because I know in your bio, you were born here in California, you've been on the East Coast, and now you're in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've been everywhere.
And that is over a span of how long though? Like over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years?
In 15 years, I've probably lived in 10 different places.
Oh my goodness. Now, as an artist and a creator, has that influenced and altered ebb and flow with your style of music or the way you write and produce?
It has, in that I have always written, but I've had periods where I've just been burned out. I actually lived in a little town outside of Atlanta for a while, and I had a band there that was signed, and so I lived in Austin, I've lived here in San Antonio, I've lived in Los Angeles, so I spent a little bit of time in San Francisco. For just different reasons, I end up going places, and the environment always definitely has something to do with how I write, so. Yeah, for sure.
Because I know. I live vicariously through people like you. I don't really travel so much. I mean, as a kid, I went every other summer to Hawaii for 6 weeks. And when you're a child, you don't even realize you're on a different, in a different state or even an island. You just know that you get to go to the beach every day and it's super cool. But you know, and other than that, I've been up and down the coast, like Oregon, Washington. I mean, California is just so big anyway. And then for as far as East Coast, the only place I've been was Florida because my daughter and I went to Orlando, which people say don't count because it's not like up. When people say East Coast, people always think North. They think Boston. They think New
Right.
York. They think
Yeah.
And so, but and then I've been to Utah for work like one time. And when it's work, you're not sightseeing, you're working. So I just literally go nowhere. I've been Northern California like my whole life, and I can't help but think how different, even as much as I feel I know now, how different and the perspective I would have just living in different time zones, in different cultures, and different the way laws are. It just it's all
Yeah.
so inherently different. So I mean, so then, okay, so with your music and your projects, is you did say that you kind of started out pretty much on the solo end of it. What was your focus when you were creating then with your music, and then did it or how did it change when it graduated to having a full band?
Well, I think from the writing perspective, it was always I always did stuff about like relationships, right? Like, and it just kind of goes back to like all the different places I've been. Um, and when I got to New York, and it was like the first real time being in New York City where I felt like, ah, I'm home. Like the pace of it, the people, and there's just this big misconception that New Yorkers are just rude, right? And that's not true. It's they're focused, they're hyper focused, right? Everybody's needing to get somewhere to do something, and most of them have multiple jobs, especially the creatives, and so all of that has changed how I've written. And I've always started out by myself, and then would try to get musicians, and then so there's periods of I'm by myself, and then I have a band, and then I'm by myself, and I have a band. And then I had a band in, like I said, just outside of Georgia. And after that band broke up, I was like, I'm done. I don't have anything left to say. I don't want to say anything. I want everybody to leave me alone. And I'm just kind of done. And I wound up being a lot of people's kind of go-to because I play the guitar, I play the drums. I can figure out a lot of things very quickly. So I was like suddenly became people's go-to. And when I got to New York, I was like, I think I have something to say now. But it wasn't relationship, related, which was different for me. I just there was like
So
I said,
that's
there was
where it changed. It went from relationship
right.
to what?
It went from relationship to the world.
Oh, okay. Something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
started. I did this weird thing because I started a Tumblr page for the band, or actually for the solo project when I first started to come back into music, and I met all these really cool young people who were like storytellers and photographers, and they're right, just everything. But I quickly realized like the kids on Tumblr are a lot of them are the outcasts and the nerds, or at least the ones that were following me. So, that's probably a big like tell on my end of how big of a nerd I am. But and a lot of them were hurting. And it got to me really, really quickly, like to see how alone they felt, how discouraged they were, how unloved they felt. And then it really just became like, okay, I need to write to tell these stories, to tell the people that are part of these stories without realizing that, like, they are, without realizing it, doing it a lot of damage to these young kids. And that just kind of kicked off this chapter of my music career.
Wow. And I've never been on Tumblr, so I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
what do
didn't either.
people use? I mean, is Tumblr, what is it? I mean, in comparison to the other social media sites. What would you compare it to for me to understand it better?
It's actually an interesting cross pollination of all of them. It's like Facebook because you can post and tell a little blurb, but then you can also like put an entire story there. And it's Twitter because you can just do a quick like, hey, this is it, and that kind of thing. So it's just like, yeah.
Okay.
And I know it didn't really take off, but I found myself there and I was like, okay.
So you kind of found a purpose then to go beyond what you were hurting about internally to how can I heal and inspire others that are hurting.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a definite different shift, because I know whenever I've talked with anyone who a lot of their focus happens to be like love and relationships, how much harder it is to write when you're happy versus when you're struggling. And then so now here you are wanting to write about your experiences in the world and the people you've been with outside, like platonically. And it still is almost in that, it's almost in that wheelhouse in a sense, but wow. Okay. Because now, and let's fast forward, we're going to kind of jump back and forth, because the song that I was introduced when I learned about you, My America, that one definitely encompasses more than just you. That's like all of us. And when did you write that, and what inspired you to write that song?
When all of the protests first started happening after, there was George Floyd and there was all these protests going on. It hit hard because, well, obviously I'm brown, right? And I said this the other night. It's like, from the brown person perspective, like we're out there marching, and because for some of us it's been happening every day, every week for the last 10 decades, for the last 10 days, to some degree or another. All of us have dealt with that form of hate and discrimination and violence towards who we are, right? Yeah. And so I was probably too consumed in what was happening, because it really got to me. And then one night there was a picture on Twitter, and I'm sure like a lot of people saw it, but that really just kind of turned on the light for me. I'm like, okay, I can't be complacent anymore. There was a picture of a little boy, and he has this clearly like his little bag of snacks in his hand. He's wearing his Spider-Man costume, and he's on top of his dad's shoulders. And what you see is it looks like there's all these. Going with that. You know which picture I'm talking about. Like all these cops look like they're pointing guns at them. And as the story came out, like that's not really what was happening, but the picture, right, was like, what is going on? Yeah. And I just had that moment where literally I saw that, I got up, I went to my studio, I wrote down a bunch of words and got my acoustic guitar, and just kind of the line in there just that kept going over and over is, "This is not my America." For me, I grew up, I'm a first generation Mexican American. My mom grew up in Mexico. She didn't graduate high school, as a lot of them don't. She came here to help my grandmother help the rest of their family get here so they could go to school and they could do things with their lives. So, in the America that I grew up loving was was that America that gave my mom the opportunity to get here. They gave my grandmother the opportunity to work here. And they gave my uncles and aunts the opportunity to go to school here. That's what I grew up with. That was my concept. And I've lived in such a little bubble of peace and tranquility everywhere I've been, mm-hmm. that it wasn't really hitting me. But now all this stuff is going on, and I see that picture and I'm just like, no, like I can't. Like, yeah. I don't want those little ones to grow up feeling any of the hate that we have felt. So if I can do one thing to ensure that like we leave a better future for them, then I'm going to try. And before I would kind of stay away from making my political views known. At this point in the day, I know so many who are just like, screw it, this is not okay. And this has happened to me. Maybe not to that scale and not to that degree, but it's happened to me and it doesn't need to happen anymore. So
I can totally relate to that on kind of a level, because I'm technically first generation Filipino American, because when my father and his siblings, well, I should say back it up, when my grandparents on my father's side, they're from the Philippines, and they came over to Hawaii, but Hawaii wasn't considered a state yet. That's what is interesting about it. They headed over there at the very beginning of the century. And it wasn't until later on when, not shortly after, it was like kind of in, my dad was old. He passed away. They're all if you're wondering, because I'm 52 and they're up there. But so, and I lived in a bubble, right? And for any of us who are older than 40, that comes from being, when we say live in a bubble, it's because we didn't have the internet. And so, I say this almost every time when I come up on this subject. It's like our outlet and our knowledge to the world outside of our front door was the radio, was the television that had 13 channels, was the newspaper. And that was pretty much it. And then whatever our ancestors, our aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpas shared with us, their stories and their experiences. But now what you and I have experienced in the rest of the world in these last 6 months has been because we can see it in an instant because of our phones. And that's really the difference. It's like, for anyone who thinks racism hasn't been around, what we're seeing has always happened. We just didn't get to see it happen. Just because you don't,
we didn't talk about it.
Yeah, well, right, but they don't. It's like, if a tree falls in the forest and it doesn't make a sound when it fall. It's that concept. Yeah. It goes right back to American history that was taught in public schools that never talked about actually how this land came to be, or, not just with the slavery of black people from Africa, but like with your family and your generations coming from Mexico and wherever else everyone is coming from. It was a very sugar-coated, sized down, version of it. And so, for you to be so impacted by that and looking back generations, I mean, and I felt that in that song. I mean, your song, My America, it's you and the acoustic. It's an echoey sound. It's this, you did produce it in a sense to where it's like this alone feeling when you're not alone, but all of a sudden you feel alone, but you don't want to feel alone anymore, right?
Right,
in a sense,
right.
Because that's why I know your lyric in the beginning, the chorus is, "This is not my America," to the end of it when you say, "This is what my America is," and you're talking about love, and you're talking about unity, and you're talking about community, right? And then so the footage in the video even is of some of the protesting. Now, is that footage you got? Is it someone that got? I mean, how did you end up with that? It's a really good video.
Well, thank you for that. That's actually the brainchild of my buddy Jim. Partly he took some of the footage, and then I was on Instagram, and I just noticed like people posting videos of them participating. I was like, I need to know these people. And then so I went, I would follow them, and then I was like, hey, can we use your footage? I'll show you the song, so you're not like surprised. If you share your footage with us, we'll throw it in there, and I'd just be eternally grateful. So it actually gave me an opportunity to meet people from San Diego, from Toronto, Canada, from somewhere in Hawaii, San Diego. I said San Diego already. Somebody in like New York. It's just a bunch of people that basically were kind enough to let me borrow their footage and to put it to that video, because it was everybody's march at that point.
Yeah. Oh, that is incredible. I mean, I've participated in marches in the past and in protests, and for anyone who hasn't, understand that the biggest takeaway when you involve yourself in a group march or a group protest is you see in numbers physically the support that's actually visible. It isn't, algorithm numbers, paid bots. It's like real people, because I think the biggest one prior to this was the first year of the Women's March.
Right.
And that was worldwide and huge. And to be in sheer numbers, no matter where you were in the U.S. or the world, all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, there's so many. And it wasn't even just women. There were men, there were non-binary, there were people that were supporting, the whole effort of just equality. So then you fast forward to what happened this year, and I'll never forget it. It was like by day 6, I think it was, of after George Floyd's murder, every state in the United States and about almost a dozen countries were marching simultaneously on the same day.
Yeah.
And that tugged at my heart because it's people in other countries that were coming together to say, we see you and this is how we feel about it. And, I was moved to tears in the beginning of all this because I didn't know, I don't think anyone knew it was going to take off like it did.
Yeah.
And so, and then so even going a little bit deeper, because like I said, we're going to go all over the place. Because you touched on something before we came live when I said I wanted to ask you how you felt about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, which wasn't that long ago, less than 2 weeks ago, because you were almost going to wear, you said you had a shirt.
I had a
and
shirt.
You said something really interesting. You actually almost didn't become a musician.
I didn't. I almost became a lawyer.
Yes. And when you say almost, how far into it did you get before
I
decided to? Okay.
I did political science and government.
Okay.
In my undergrad.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I need to. And I had always followed RBG's career. To me, like, if you're a woman, that's a woman that you need to know about. Like, she fought for equality. She fought for making our lives better. She fought for the pay gap. And so she's always been a hero of mine. And, but I thought, I had a couple of people listen to a couple of songs that I had written, and they were like, I think you have a story to tell. And so, it just becomes, okay, which hard career do you want at that point? Do you want to fight for things here, or do you want to fight over here?
Yeah. One of them's going to be with music, one of them's going to be without.
Right. Pretty much.
One of them's going to be more in the political arena in a sense. I mean, so when you were taking the classes and you thought about that, did you already know which area of work you were going to get into law at the time?
I had an idea. I wanted to work with human rights. Like, that's always been something that I've looked at. And I have friends who work in that now. And sometimes I have those moments where, like, music's not doing anything for me. I'm like, man, I picked the wrong career. I could have been over here, busting somebody's balls for, for something stupid that they said. But, it's life. You do what you can.
It's definitely, and I worked, I'm honestly kind of teetering on the fence of going that direction, to be honest. Not as an attorney, but in the political arena, in activism and human rights and that sort of thing, women's rights, trans rights. I worked for 1 year at an international law firm in San Francisco, way back. Nice. I like on a lucky star got in it's like a secretarial position. It was so eye-opening for me because I went from living in a smaller city to commuting to the Bay every day, 5 days a week for a year. And it was such the wake-up call because, like, the firm that I worked for, it was a Jewish-owned firm, 2 generations. And we're talking, this had to have been like 20 years ago. And these were attorneys that were, since it was international, they were getting paid like $6 a minute back then. And they were in suits every day, even though they almost never saw anybody. Because this is, like I said, this is before people weren't doing, like, cameras on their laptops and stuff. Right. It was just hardcore computers and, it wasn't fancy cell phones that could do none of that back then. And so I was the person patching through clients from wherever. I got to go and walk to the American Express building to trade out, currency because maybe one of the attorneys was traveling to, Israel or traveling to China or wherever we had clients. And I felt empowered and I had opportunities to, like, get referrals and go to the classes, and I almost did it, and then I changed, and then I moved to Sacramento, and then I never left. But it's in, and then trying to figure out who the heck I am and what I'm doing. But it's interesting how now at full circle, because let's go back to the music thing. How has it been for you as an artist going through this, the COVID, knowing this is the elections? I mean, now knowing that, you know, you have followed RBG. I mean, you're right. So many women should know, if they don't know, that that woman fought every day tirelessly for so many years. And we're on the edge of one of the most important elections in in our history, because it isn't just the presidency. There's several things to vote on. There's Senate seats to flip. There's important, you know, props to vote on, and losing her when we lost her, man, you had to know, right? She was just holding on. I think literally she probably was doing her best to hold on till the whole thing was done.
Yeah.
And she was so close, right? So close. She was like 6 weeks away. You know, this woman's been doing this her whole life.
Yeah.
She was like, give me whatever you need to give me. Cortisone shots, whatever, you know, whatever drugs, like keep me going. Because the fate for women is just like resting on me being alive. I mean, that's a crazy amount of pressure to have on
you can only imagine that she felt that.
Yes. Because you and I, as women of color, I mean, I have to admit, being Filipino and half Filipino, and because I identify as queer, and I came out super late. So the only thing I think I lived in white privilege. I did. I benefited from white privilege my whole life. And I think the only times when I look back on it where it was an issue is because I was a lot. I mean, you can't tell now because I'm inside a lot, but I tan really easy. Unfortunately, I can pale out because my mother's white. But when I was a kid playing outside, I was Aborigine dark. And so anytime I'd walk around with my mom, who is white, freckles, red hair, piercing blue eyes. When I got old enough into probably 4th and 5th grade, and then they'd see my sister who had a different father, and she was a lot whiter and she was taller, they would say, you're adopted. That's not your sister. That's not your mom. And my heart would sink. I'm like, no, that's my mom. And then I would come crying to her, Mom, you can be honest with me. Did you adopt me? And she would be so frustrated with me. And I think that's the closest at all that I would ever experience to having doubt, because other people planted that seed in my head.
Yeah.
On where I came from and who I belong to and what I'm allowed to do. So I don't know if you've ever experienced that growing up. I mean, because were you in California?
Well, we were born in California. I spent like the first 6 years there, and then my dad moved us to Texas, where we were the only brown people for miles.
Wow.
We literally lived across from a cow pasture. There was a dairy farmer on one side. There were horses behind us. It was a 2-lane dirt gravel road in the south. You know, because it's funny how Texas doesn't get deemed the South, but it's the South.
It's
the
South. It's southern there.
It is.
Especially when you were young. What were you, like 7, 8 years old?
At that point, yeah, probably 7, 8 years old. And,
the only brown kid in class?
Yeah. But, you know, it was one of those things where my mom has always been smarter than the average bear. And that's probably what saved us. Because she was like, you're not going to that school way out there. We're going to send you to this little itty bitty Catholic school over here. So, you know,
smart.
It was a pretty diverse little community of Catholic kids. So they're
smart.
You know,
good mom. Go mom.
Yes, yeah. Like I could talk forever about my mom and
it's like survival skills,
her.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing before you came along, she had to hone those skills.
Yeah. She was 16 when she first came over to the States, and was cleaning people's houses to bring the rest of her sisters and her brothers over. So, the thing is, she doesn't talk about it because there's a bunch of nasty stuff that we since went down. She's super protective of us now. Or when we were growing up, and even now, So it's one of those things where we don't talk about it. We know it happened, and because of that, we are very thankful and grateful for everything that she went through to give us the lives that we have now. So,
And you feel, and that's obviously where your drive and your respect and your resilience comes from, knowing where you come from and kind of having to pay it forward.
yeah, for sure. For sure.
Ugh.
It's why, for a lot of reasons, I took on telling the stories of the kids that I found on Tumblr. So like it's not out anymore, and I've been reworking it with this band, but I put out an album of 10 songs 4 years ago, and it's basically all the stories from the kids that I met on Tumblr, all their heartache, all their frustration. So
do they know it?
Yeah.
Did you let them know? Did you ever share it in Tumblr and?
Yeah,
Aww.
Sure. But there are a couple that we're bringing back because they have bigger stories that I want to make sure that their life is not forgotten, because we've lost a couple, and that's because of everything that we're talking about right now, which is just the simple lack of respect and the ability to mock people for no reason other than who they are, which is just always, it's something that makes me mad and makes me sad all at the same time.
Completely. I mean, for people who might not recall, I mean, it seems like these last 4 years have been the longest years of our lives, literally. There was so much that was done and said and posted and shared and argued. And, to touch on what you just brought up, just here, even in Sacramento, I remember shortly after, Trump was elected in, and I have friends that have little ones in school or kids in school, and then friends that are teachers, and some are both. And right off the bat, non-white people are being just accosted out in the open about going back to where they come from. And, I had a friend share that she remembers, I don't remember if she said, I think she was a teacher and teaching like first or second grade, and a young one wasn't saying, like a young white kid wasn't saying it mean to the brown kid, but because of his upbringing, he questioned it in all honesty and looked at his friend and said, will you have to leave now? That's, you think about it in that context. You've got a kid who's been raised and they're paying attention, the news is on, parents are talking or whatever. He gets to school and now he's like, am I going to lose my friend? Is my friend going to be forced to go back home, go back where they come from?
Right.
And it started there, and now look where we're at. When we're fighting tooth and nail, it's like, this week's been the longest week ever. Today was the longest day ever, and it's right. Almost. I feel like the closer it gets to November 3rd, it goes from we're traveling miles to traveling hundreds of feet to inch by inch, and it's just I need like 3 naps a day. It's ridiculous. Right? Because and the thing is that's like on our plate, and then a month later or less than a month later, we've got the main holidays. We've got the Thanksgiving holiday, which I ain't gonna do that, and then because how I feel about that holiday, and then we've got Christmas, and you were even bringing up that you're working on an album for Christmas,
right?
Is that going to have a different? I mean, I don't know if you've had experience with creating any, albums before for the holidays, but it's gotta feel different this year. It's almost like if we make it to Christmas, man, this album is gonna be, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's not. It's gonna be an album around Christmas, but it has nothing to do with Christmas.
Okay. So it's releasing around the holidays.
Yeah.
And nothing to do with the holidays or family or get together. It's just gonna coincide.
Yeah, we've just been we've been fortunate enough to virtually be working.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
I'll cut things and then I kick them off to the fellas, and then they send things back, and I'm like, no, that's not it, and I kick it back to them, and then they send it back again, and so like this whole COVID has just been a weird experience for a lot of people, but for me, it's been like I'm gonna get to work. Like, let me get all these thoughts out of my head so I can finally sleep, and we'll write 20, 30 different songs, and we'll keep like 5 by the time, you've done scrutinizing them. And so yeah, we're gonna release around the holidays. We were joking around the other night. We were joking around the other night that we're gonna bring back that what was it? Now I can't remember. A horrible Christmas song. It still may come. I don't.
Not
know.
Grandma got run over by a reindeer.
No.
Okay.
Bruce redid it.
Bruce Springsteen?
Yes.
Santa Claus is coming to town?
No, the other one.
Because he did that.
Merry Christmas, Baby. I think that's the official title.
Or Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's interesting. Okay, because and then so I've got 2 questions mulling in my head. First one I wanted to ask is what's it like being the only female in your band? Because it sounds like you're the only female in your band, but this is your project. And then also you said something about you're building a home with a custom made studio. Did that start before, during COVID?
Yeah, during COVID.
Okay, was it because of COVID, or was it just sort of coincided?
Yeah, kind of. It was like the perfect Bermuda Triangle of events, and I was just like,
I'm stuck at home. I'm gonna build a home.
I'm gonna build a home, and it's gonna have a fancy studio.
Nice.
That I can work in and make a lot of noise, and no one will care.
And are you in it right now in the studio?
No, I'm
okay.
I'm in my little kind of soundproof area of my house right now. So yeah.
So I see some guitars behind you, and I see a really cool mic in front of you. Talk about a couple of those guitars. What is your go-to? Let's do a little switch on gear for a couple of minutes.
Okay, so this is my go-to. She's been through hell. She's been through hell and back.
I see the tape, but she's still beautiful.
Yeah, and she still sounds great.
Which one is that?
This is my Taylor. It's a Koa. It's an all
Koa wood.
Yes.
Taylor, good guitars. They repurpose a lot of their wood too.
Yeah, I love them. I have another one, but everything I write is usually starts on her first, and then moves over depending on what vibe I end up going with. So
whether it stays acoustic or goes full band electric.
Right.
So the electric behind you, which one is that one?
That's Lucy.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Lucy. Say hello, Lucy.
Look at her two-tone.
Yeah. If you're ever really close to it, you can tell that she's got little gold flecks in the black paint. So.
Ooh. And which brand is that?
It's a Fender. It's a Fender Telecaster.
You can't go wrong with those.
No, these are my 2 oldest ones, so they are usually always out. Because you never know.
Yeah, when the muse will strike you.
Exactly.
That's the beauty about having the instruments around, right?
Yeah.
I have to say that those 2 brands are the ones. I mean, I'm not a player, but I love to tinkle. And when I go to NAMI chair, and Fender and Taylor are 2 of the 4 or 5 that I'll go and visit, and because you get to play with the stuff. I mean, have you been to NAMM?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just the cool. Disneyland for musicians. Yep. Good Lord, just to play with everything.
I leave my credit card at home.
Smart. Because what's funny? It's smart to do, because even though it is just a trade show and technically things aren't on sale, they will whip out a website and go, if you pre-order now, you'll save this much. You can get it. And you'll be one of the first 200 people to get this new stuff. They get you. They get you.
And we'll give you this cup.
Yes.
And
that's my favorite is the swag. When you first get there, anyone who goes to the NAMM convention, let's back this up. NAMM is NAMM. It is the National Association of Music Merchants. It's the world's largest music trade show, and the biggest one is always in January in Anaheim, California. Yep. And it's 1,600 vendors, and it's a 4 or 5 day affair. And over 1 million people will have been in and out, and it's invite only. You can't even buy tickets. But I tell you, I know I'll get there. I'll get there early the first 2 days, because I'm hitting all the places I know that's going to have the coolest swag, the bags and the keychains, especially because some of them will do the whole keychain that's the plug-in, the fancy
USB
plugs.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, not even the USB for for your gear, and they'll turn those into keychains. I love those. fancy pics, necklaces out of the pics, whatever, like the coolest stuff. It's so crazy, right?
I go for the
be there with
ridiculous
so
mugs.
much stuff. Yes, if you're lucky and they'll have those too, yes. So now you've got a really fancy looking microphone in front of you. Is that for
Yes.
recording songs?
No, it's just for doing like live streams and stuff.
Nice. Okay. Because
Yes.
some people like to record music on those. What is that?
No, this is a Shure. It's a
Okay.
I don't remember what model it is, but it's not very expensive, but it works for the live stream and making sure I don't sound horrible.
Right.
Which
It's
is
got a
the
very
goal.
50s flair to it. 40s, 50s.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's just
Yeah.
good for videos and stuff.
It's pretty dope. Yeah, I dig
Yeah.
it. I dig it.
So yeah.
Nice.
But yeah,
Nice.
I am the only girl in the band.
Yeah. What's that? Now, is that on purpose?
No.
I mean, would you ever entertain having another? And I ask this because, to this day, women still are not as represented mainstream wise in any aspect of the music industry, despite the fact that there's so many of us
Out
working
there.
it in all angles, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, for you, because it's your project, obviously you are in the band, whether it's you, 2 more people, or 7 more people. But has it just always sort of organically in synergy, it just worked having males in the band?
Ooh.
Let's be real. Let's do it.
Yeah. So what happened was, I have always struggled. Like I have these songs, and then somebody will hear them, and then they say, "Well, let's go into the studio," and I'm like, "Oh, okay," and immediately, like, they no longer become my songs, right? Because then they have all these ideas and things, and flash forward to the last 5 years, and I had gotten my feet wet with engineering because of different people, and I'd gotten my feet wet with mixing, and I'd gotten my feet wet with producing, and I was like, okay, well, I do want to do these songs, but let me get this band together, and let's see if I can create them the way I want. And what wound up happening was, like, it just never ceases to amaze me how many times somebody goes, yeah, and then I'll go like, how about Wednesday? And then I never hear from them again, right? And so do that 10,000 times, and that's been my life as a musician. And so luckily, because I got my feet wet with all these different areas, I finally said, fuck it. I don't need any boys. I don't need anybody else. I'm just going to go in. I'm going to play the drums. I'm going to play the guitar. I'm going to play the bass. I'm going to do it all. And
so you play all the instruments?
Yes.
How many instruments do you play?
Enough to get an album done.
Wow. So have you ever done the thing like a lot of people do where you record a video of you playing all the parts and then you kind of put it together and you're the band?
No.
You should.
No, because I thought about that, but I was like, but really my inspiration came from Dave Grohl and how he did the Foo Fighters. And I was like, that is genius. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then suddenly, I put the album out, and suddenly it was like, well, why didn't you tell me I would have helped you? I'm like,
did I ask?
Yeah, right. I'm like, really?
Why didn't you tell me? I think I did.
So.
Dang, okay.
Yeah. So the first album that I put out that I mentioned earlier, like I played everything, I mixed it, I engineered it, I produced it, and I even mastered it, and I put it out there, and then suddenly people wanted to know, oh, we didn't know you had come back into music. We didn't know. Why didn't you let us know? And I was like, you know what, whatever. And then I came into Texas for South by.
I was going to just ask you, have you been to South by Southwest? Because that's one thing I have not done, and I almost did it last year.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. I've done
2 years ago. Sorry, 2018.
I've been fortunate enough to have played like off in a couple of shows, and I've always had a lot of fun. And so this go around, I had not been around I like disappeared according to everybody. I wasn't writing anymore, and I was like, I'm just gonna go. We'll play whatever off South we can do. And I hired the guys. A couple of them I've known for literally a decade. My bass player, and they were like, "Well, hey, you know, if you're gonna stick around, we'll keep playing." And now there's a fully functional Onism E band.
There it is.
And there you have it.
Nice. And
Yeah.
now, did you have plans to perform at South by Southwest this year before it shut down?
Yeah.
Man.
That's why I came in. I came in for that. I was in New York City prior to.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah. So I came in. I hooked up with these guys who were like really, really sweet and cool and great musicians. And we had 4 different shows booked up, and then COVID hit, and I was like, oh, what happened?
Oh my gosh. I've known a handful of artists where, you know, they had it all lined up. And the thing is you have to do it in advance. So a lot of them had their tickets and their, you know, and their hotels booked and just the, you know, days set off from their day jobs. And, you know, it's, you know, in fact, NAMM, they're just, is going to be pretty much all online this coming January. You know, we at the Women's International Music Network, we host the She Rocks Awards, and this would be our 9th year. And it's, or 10th. Is this the 10th year? No, 9th year. And it's going to be, you know, online. It'll be our first time doing it online. But, you know, we'll pull it off. But it's nothing like being there. Because for me, I mean, I have 0 experience with the South by Southwest. And I hear it's just a huge party, like for a week. You know, but with NAMM, it's always, that was my music family. So every year, because everyone goes, right? It's that reunion. Right. It's that music reunion. And so I'm going to miss not seeing my homies in January. I mean, by now I would have already had my badge, and I would have been receiving all the emails from NAMM and people trying to connect and and just, it's crazy, you know. Just I'm looking at the website now. South by Southwest they've got EDU online thing for 2021. But
and they're trying to figure out shows.
Yeah, because they have to. They would. I mean, you do it a year in advance, so. You know, and that's what, March, that's 6 months away. So my guess is that one's going to be online if they do it, right? That's what they're planning. It's
probably what I'm
checking from what I'm saying. And I'm like, but I'm guessing that's not going to be the same at all.
No.
You know, the synergy is just not there.
No, it is a party, but at the same time, like for me, there was always a list of specific parties that I would hit where I knew, like you, like I was going to see so-and-so that I hadn't seen forever. I was going to see so-and-so that I hadn't seen forever. And yeah.
Because like that with NAMM, we do that. It's like the all the booths and all the workshops and everything is until 6, and then it's the after performances and the after parties and the after connects, right? In between the hotels and whatever. And I'm guessing it's almost the same like with South, but at least though, because this is what I'm thinking, because they would make a grip. Those tickets were almost like going to Burning Man. Those tickets are expensive, and so now with no one physically going, I doubt the ticket prices will be anywhere near that high. I'm sure they're still going to charge, but what would you get away with knowing you're physically not being near anybody? What would you pay for? That's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, we're going to be following. I want to follow that because I want to see where that ends up.
It'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah. So then since you were in Texas for that and now that isn't happening, do you see yourself staying in Texas for a while, or you are building a home? Hard to say.
You know, it's, I have the utmost respect and love for the guys that have stuck with me through COVID and are helping me do these songs, because as cool as I am, there's nothing like the touch of a fucking badass bass player like Chris.
Okay.
He's got a groove to him that it's hard to find. He loves playing music. And I send him something, and the only thing he ever complains about is if it's like under 95 beats per minute. And then he's like, really? Really? You know I don't do the sad songs well. And I'm like, you'll live. just come on, you can do it. You can do it. So I would like to see what happens with Onism E. And since they actually were a part of My America, and we've gotten such good response from that, that I can take like 95% ownership, maybe, because they put their heart into that song for me, and I'm grateful to them for their time and for working to make that happen. And like I said, since then we've recorded other songs that we're going to put out in November. This will be a little rock and roll for your Christmas.
Yeah. We could use that. Nice little upbeat party.
Yeah. A little bit.
Rock the end of this year away.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then, in closing and wrapping this up, do you have plans for your 2021? In music?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like we are sitting probably on 20, 30 songs right now. And it's a matter of, it's hard to work in a studio by yourself every day. I get my ADD kicks in real bad and I want to go play outside. So, I'm hopeful that the fellas and I will get out at some point and play some shows. There might be a little something for the kids in November. We're gonna be we're looking at doing something possibly, but because I'm a germaphobe and I don't I don't need the COVID.
No.
I'm trying to make sure we're really safe about stuff that we're doing, because I would not want to jeopardize anybody's health for music,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's considering everything that's happened this week and what happened today. You definitely, you can just turn at any time. You really have to be careful. So good that you are. And especially with the traveling that you do. Well, I guess not now, but not since COVID. But that's good, though. Wow, 20 or 30 songs. So you've at least got them in the vault. It's just the whole launching of it, right? Because, are you, when you're promoting all of this, none of it's live performance? Is it live streamed performance? Are all of you kind of safe to be together and perform? Or you just, how's that working out?
I have avoided everything.
Okay. So have I. I feel you. See how pale I am? Thanks, Mom.
I have not. I have avoided everything. But I have. I was telling somebody the other day. It might have been you, actually. I finally got my iRig stream.
You told me.
Yeah. Okay, it was you.
You were so excited. You're like,
yes. Okay, but it doesn't like certain applications, right? But it likes Instagram and it likes Facebook. So I will probably be popping up every now and then finally in support of that, probably do some acoustic stuff. And then like I said, we are looking at something possibly for November in the safest possible manner if we can do that. I am hopeful that November 3rd, we all do our part and vote in the correct people to make sure they are protecting us.
Yeah. Yes.
And getting
that's the key right there.
Getting us through this. Yes. Ugh. Us. And if that happens, then, I think a lot of us will breathe easier, knowing that there's a for sure end of the light at the, tunnel, light, whatever. The tunnel.
That's that first part. Light. Yeah. I feel the same way. It's like I want to pursue things and get things going, but then I'm wondering, do I have a future?
Yeah.
And what's that going to look like?
Exactly.
I guess I will know in a month or so.
And I hate that, right? It's like,
yes, because you and I can tell we're the same in the sense that we don't like to sit idle. When I got back into podcasting, so you said you had looked up some of my stuff. My history has been with like internet radio. I did podcasting about 5 years ago. I do red carpet interviews. Going around NAMM, I'm securing like all these interviews. So I'm used to working all the time. Mm-hmm. And then for a while there, nothing, like crickets. And then I finally found somewhere where I can live and set up a studio, because this is my dining room, by the way.
Nice.
I thank you. These are all like, I just stuck up more panels. They just came via Amazon again, and now I'm deciding if I want to do like diagonals, if I want to add different colors. Like, I'm just going nuts.
Okay.
And so now that I did this, I mean, you saw I added you to my little recap video, right? Because it was International Podcast Day 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I literally kicked off my first episode on September 4th, and by September 28th, I had 13 podcast episodes. 14. 12 were for the Bad Filipino, and then 2 were for the Women's International Music Network, which was the new thing I just had the honor of being able to do. My boss was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we flipped our front and center written feature to live front and center, becoming a podcast weekly. So now it's like, you know, when I had to DIY all this, because the last time I did a podcast, I was working, Noisy Snail Studios were the ones producing and engineering everything. I just showed up at the studio, had my guest, talked in some mic, done. For me, I'm learning everything, all of it. So this month I'm going to work into sponsorship and better my skills of taking these live videos and then turning them into audios and putting them on about like 10 different platforms, right? So this month there's an awesome podcast conference happening for 10 days. It's like 8 days. It's like 4 and 4. It starts on the 19th, and I already registered for it. In fact, my sponsors, I'm endorsed by MXO Microphones. That's the whole setup I have. They have a discount code, and so I'm doing all of this because I know at some point I'm going to end up going somewhere with this craft, but at the same time, I'm like, will I?
Right.
You know, that's a hard place to be when you're very, very self-driven, like you and I are.
When you're creative, it's and like, when we're making all these adjustments to get by.
Yeah.
And we have no idea.
Because we don't want to sit and then be mad if we didn't do, but then at the same time, can we sit? Because every time I turn around, I have to force myself to get away from my equipment. I have to force myself to get off my phone because I just come, and here comes a creation, and here comes a thing, and here comes a thing, and here comes a thing, and so I get you, like on a different level. Like I'm not creating music, but I'm, right. It's like, oh, and here comes a thing. And then I got the weird hours. I've got the musician hours. I'll be up until 2 a.m. Then I'm up at 6. Then I fall back asleep and I'm up at 9. It's weird. I don't have that set. I used to have the 9 to 5 almost. It's weird. And look at you building a home, building a studio. So, we, I don't know. I think people like you and I and those out there that are like us, I think we're just going to make it happen. I think in a month, if it doesn't happen the way we need it to happen, we're still going to band together and just make it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just can't stop. You can't stop. Because no matter what we're doing, kids are still being bullied. People are still being picked on.
Yes.
And crap is still happening.
Yeah. So and we have to be the ones we've got the strength, the know-how, the resilience to protect them and see them through and fight so that that doesn't have to happen. So I feel you on that one. Well, oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking the time. I swear an hour just went by.
I know. What happened there?
I know, that was quick. And so I look forward, everybody, looking forward to your new music coming out in November. You see on the ticker on the bottom. Just follow Onism E at her website, which is www.onisme.com. All her socials are there. Do you have a newsletter, by the way? Do you have a newsletter?
No.
Okay, because if you did, I always try to push people's newsletters because I'm a big fanatic of those because algorithms don't mess that up like Facebook.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
I know. I gotta work on that.
If you've got time, you seem to be such the creative and you can get that going. But definitely hit her website up, look for her new music. And again, thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Out of your crazy Friday.
Thank you.
It was good connecting with you.
I'm just going to eat Cheetos now.
There it is. Go eat Cheetos. I think I'm going to eat something too. Don't tell nobody. Shh. Don't tell my trainer. This is Myki Angeline signing off with the Bad Filipino. Everybody have a great weekend.